James Carter had always been a lucky man. At 32, he had a high-paying job, a beautiful fiancée, and a future most people dreamed of. But luck has a way of running out. One rainy evening, as he drove home from work, his vision blurred, his hands trembled, and his chest tightened with a pain so intense that he barely had time to pull over before blacking out. When he woke up, the world was a blur of white hospital walls, the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor, and the distant murmur of doctors speaking in hushed voices. Dr. Reynolds, a middle-aged surgeon with tired eyes, stood at his bedside. "Mr. Carter," he said in a tone both relieved and serious, "you suffered a severe heart attack. Your heart was failing. You were lucky. An emergency heart transplant became available just in time." James touched his chest, feeling the bandages wrapped tightly around his torso. A new heart was now beating inside him. Someone had died so that he could live. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he felt it for the first time. A presence. At first, it was just a sensation, a heaviness in his chest, like something was pressing down on him. Then came the dreams, vivid, gruesome, terrifying. In the first dream, he was running down a dark alley, rain pouring from the sky, his breath ragged. Footsteps thundered behind him, heavy and relentless. Then a hand, ice cold, grabbed his shoulder. James woke up gasping for air. His hospital room was freezing. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment he swore he saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of his bed. But when he blinked, it was gone. The next night, the dreams grew worse. He was trapped, bound to an operating table, bright surgical lights blinding him. A masked doctor loomed over him, scalpel in hand, and a voice whispered from the darkness, "He stole from me." James awoke, drenched in sweat, his heart hammering inside his chest. Something was wrong. He needed to know where his heart had come from. A week later, after being discharged, James became obsessed. He called the hospital, demanded answers, but privacy laws kept the donor's identity a secret. That didn't stop him. After bribing a nurse and digging through medical records, he found what he was looking for. His new heart had belonged to Ethan Graves, a 28-year-old man who had been murdered, stabbed in the chest. His heart stolen. James felt his own heartbeat falter. His hands shook as he stared at Ethan's picture, a man with piercing blue eyes and a solemn expression. The newspaper article said Ethan had been last seen leaving a bar downtown before vanishing. Days later, his body was found in an abandoned building, his chest carved open, his heart missing. James felt like he was going to be sick. That night, the whispers started. Soft at first, indistinct like a radio signal cutting in and out. But then they became clear. "He took it. He took my heart." James shot up in bed, his breath catching. The room was ice cold. He turned toward the window and saw it. A figure stood in the corner of the room. Pale skin, hollow eyes, his chest a gaping wound. "Ethan!" James screamed. The hauntings became relentless. Wherever James went, he felt watched. He heard his own heart beating in his chest, but sometimes it wasn't his rhythm, it was someone else's. Ethan followed him in reflections, in shadows, in mirrors that didn't match his movements. One night, James woke up unable to breathe. His chest tightened like invisible hands were crushing his ribs. "Give it back." The voice was inside him now. The next morning, James had had enough. He needed answers. He tracked down Ethan's sister, Rachel Graves, and begged her to talk. She was hesitant at first, but when she saw how pale and desperate he looked, she let him inside. "I need to know," he pleaded. "What happened to Ethan?" Rachel hesitated, then whispered, "They never found who did it. But I know it wasn't random." James leaned forward. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. "Ethan was on a donor list. but not for official transplants. There are rumors of a black market for organs, people who get murdered so their body parts can be sold to the highest bidder. James's heart skipped a beat. She looked at him with haunted eyes. Whoever killed Ethan, they sold his heart. James stumbled back, his vision spinning. The hospital, the surgery, the transplant. His new heart had been taken by force. He was never supposed to have it. That night, James couldn't sleep. He felt Ethan inside him, pushing, whispering. His heart pounded violently. His skin turned pale. He collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, clutching his chest as it burned. His vision blurred, and in the darkness, he saw him, Ethan, standing over him. "You took my heart," he whispered. "Now I'm taking it back." Pain ripped through James's chest. He screamed, clawing at his skin, feeling something move inside him, a pressure building. His ribs cracked, blood bubbling from his lips. His chest split open. And in his final moments, as he lay drowning in his own blood, he saw Ethan smiling, because Ethan had his heart again. The next morning, James Carter was found dead in his apartment. The cause? Sudden heart failure. But when the coroner examined his body, they discovered something impossible. His heart was missing, gone, vanished, as if it had never been there at all. And somewhere in the darkness, Ethan Graves was finally at peace. But the whispers never stopped, because someone else was about to get a new heart. And this time, Ethan wouldn't wait. St. Mercy Hospital had been shut down for nearly a decade, its halls left to rot and decay. It wasn't just budget cuts that led to its closure. Something sinister festered within its walls. Patients disappeared, doctors went mad, and those who survived spoke of the last patient, a being that was never discharged. But urban explorers like Eric Monroe didn't believe in ghost stories. A YouTuber known for exploring abandoned places, he was eager to prove the legends were nothing more than myths. With a backpack full of equipment, he snuck in through a side door on a stormy night. The hospital smelled of mold and decay, but beneath it was something worse. A sharp, metallic tang, like old blood. Water dripped from cracked ceilings, forming dark puddles that seemed almost thicker than water. Graffiti covered the walls, most of it typical street art. But some messages were different. Scratched deep into the plaster, they read, "He never left. Don't look at him. I see his hands in the dark." A sudden sound, like a gurney rolling in the distance, made Eric freeze. His flashlight flickered. He turned a corner and found himself in the intensive care unit. Rows of beds stood empty, save for one, a single hospital bed in the center of the room, and it was occupied. A figure lay beneath the sheets, completely covered as if it had just been left there. The heart monitor next to it was dead, but as Eric stepped closer, it let out a single, long beep. Then the sheets deflated. There was nothing beneath them. Eric stumbled back, his breath quickening. The heart monitor now showed a pulse. The beeping quickened. A rasping inhale echoed through the room, though there was no one to make it. And then, a whisper behind him. "You're next." Eric whirled around, but the room was empty. The beds were untouched, the shadows deeper than before. Then his camera picked up something his eyes didn't. A figure standing in the doorway. Not walking, not floating. Just standing, motionless. Its head tilted, arms far too long, fingers twitching. Eric blinked and it was closer. He turned to run, but the exit was gone. The walls pulsed, the entire hospital shifting around him like a living thing. The air thickened, pressing against his chest. His camera glitched, the screen filling with static, as the thing whispered again. One more. A hand, ice-cold, skeletal, wrapped around his shoulder. The hospital swallowed him whole. 3 months later, another explorer named Rachel Kim stumbled upon Eric's abandoned camera. The footage was disturbing. Shaky images of distorted hallways, flickering lights, and a guttural breathing sound that wasn't Eric's. At the end of the video, there was a single frame of Eric's face, pale and wide-eyed, as a shadow loomed behind him. Rachel knew she should leave, but something compelled her forward, deeper into the hospital. The air was thick with rot, the walls whispering in a chorus of voices. She reached the intensive care unit. The single bed was no longer empty. A shape lay beneath the sheets. The heart monitor beeped, and the sheets started to move. Rachel screamed and bolted, but the door slammed shut. The gurneys rolled on their own, blocking her way. The flickering lights cast monstrous shadows that crawled along the walls. And then, a voice, low, rasping. "One more." The shadows took shape, a grotesque figure with hollow eyes stretching its elongated fingers toward her. The footage from Rachel's camera was found weeks later, but Rachel was never seen again. St. Mercy Hospital remains abandoned, but those who venture near still hear the whispers. The hospital is always waiting for one more. For decades, Blackwell Asylum stood as a monument to suffering. The hospital housed the insane, the dying, and those whom society had simply discarded. Patients were subjected to unspeakable experiments, their screams echoing through the halls long after the asylum was condemned and abandoned. No one dared enter. Until Daniel Carter did. A paranormal investigator and skeptic, Daniel had explored many haunted locations. None had ever truly frightened him. He believed fear was just the mind playing tricks. But Blackwell was different. The stories about the Forgotten Ward, a secret underground level where the worst patients were kept, intrigued him. Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel sneaked into the asylum at midnight, camera in hand. The air inside was heavy, thick with an overwhelming stench of rot and something else. Something metallic. Blood? As he made his way through the corridors, the building groaned as if shifting under its own weight. The walls were covered in faded medical charts, some splattered with brown stains. He brushed his flashlight over a door marked Ward C, Do Not Enter. His heart pounded. This was it, the Forgotten Ward. The door was locked, but rust had weakened it. A strong push, and it burst open. A stairway descended into darkness. Daniel hesitated. The air below reeked of decay. He activated his night vision camera and took careful steps downward. The Forgotten Ward was unlike the rest of the asylum. The walls were padded but shredded, as if patients had clawed them in desperation. Gurneys with leather restraints lined the hallway, each one covered in deep scratches. Then he saw the cells, heavy iron doors with observation slots. Some were open, some were locked. Daniel peered into one. The bed was overturned, the floor covered in long, deep gouges, as if someone had been dragged out, or something had tried to get in. His breath hitched as a sound echoed from deeper within the hall. A low, wet breathing. The air turned frigid. He swung his camera in the direction of the sound. The screen flickered, static interrupting the night vision feed. Then he saw it. A figure, impossibly thin, its limbs elongated, standing at the end of the corridor. Its head jerked unnaturally, and its mouth gaped open wider than humanly possible. The breathing grew louder. Daniel took a step back. The figure took a step forward. His camera glitched. The screen filled with distorted images, faces screaming, hands clawing at nothing. Then a sudden whisper in his ear. "Stay with us." Daniel bolted for the stairs, his breath ragged. But the hallway stretched. No matter how fast he ran, the exit seemed farther away. The doors on either side of him slammed open. Shadowy figures poured out, crawling on the walls, their hollow eyes fixed on him. He screamed. Suddenly, the asylum was silent. Daniel found himself standing outside, gasping for air. The sun was rising. His camera was gone. To this day, Daniel doesn't remember how he escaped, but he does remember one thing. As he ran from Blackwell, a voice echoed in his mind. "You'll be back." Lena Foster had worked the night shift at St. Mark's Hospital for 5 years, and she had seen her fair share of eerie occurrences. Hospitals were naturally unsettling at night. The flickering fluorescent lights, the distant beeping of machines, the occasional scream from the psych ward. But nothing compared to what she experienced the night she discovered the 13th floor. It started with whispers. While checking the vitals of an elderly patient in room 709, she heard faint murmuring from the hallway. Turning around, she saw nothing but the dimly lit corridor stretching into the darkness. Before she could brush it off, the old man in the bed suddenly gripped her wrist with surprising strength. His skin was cold as ice, and his sunken eyes were filled with terror. "Don't go to the 13th floor," he whispered. Lena frowned. "There is no 13th floor," she reassured him. Like most older buildings, the hospital skipped that number in its layout, jumping straight from 12 to 14. The old man's grip tightened. His voice was barely audible, but the words sent a chill down her spine. "It's there. You just don't see it yet. But they see you." That night, as Lena walked toward the break room, she noticed something strange. The old staff elevator at the end of the hall, the one that had been out of order for years, stood open, its interior bathed in dim, yellowish light. Curiosity gnawed at her. She stepped inside, staring at the panel. Her breath caught in her throat. Between 12 and 14, a new button had appeared. 13. Her pulse quickened. This had to be a prank, right? Some glitch. Before she could step back, the doors slammed shut. The air inside turned ice cold, and the elevator began to move. Ding! The number 13 glowed red. The doors slid open. Lena hesitated, but something pulled her forward. The hallway before her was nothing like the rest of the hospital. The walls were cracked, covered in peeling paint, and the air reeked of antiseptic and rot. A layer of dust coated the floor, yet there were footprints leading further into the hall. The rooms were different too. Their doors were old, rusted, and instead of numbers, they had names scratched into the wood. Dr. Ellis Carter, Nurse Beatrice Holloway, Patient Leonard Greaves. Lena's stomach turned. These were real people. She had seen their names before in hospital records, but they were all dead. A soft, metallic squeak echoed down the hall, the sound of wheels turning. Her breath hitched as a figure emerged from the shadows, pushing an old hospital gurney. The figure wore a doctor's coat, its face obscured by a blood-stained surgical mask. The gurney's wheels wobbled, squeaking louder with every step. Then, the figure stopped. It turned its head toward Lena, and the mask ripped open from the inside. A mouth, too wide, filled with rotting, jagged teeth, grinned at her. A low, inhuman growl filled the air. Behind her, doors creaked open. Shadows poured into the hallway. Figures in tattered hospital gowns emerged, their faces gaunt, eyeless, their mouths stretched into silent screams. Some dragged 4 poles, their arms blackened with veins that pulsed, as if something inside them was alive. Others stumbled on broken limbs, their bones snapping with sickening cracks. They reached for her. Lena stumbled back, heart hammering, her mind screaming for her to move. She turned and ran, the whispers behind her rising into furious screeches. The gurney slammed into the wall as the doctor creature let out a guttural howl. The elevator. She had to get to the elevator. She sprinted toward it, mashing the button frantically. The patients were closer now, their skeletal hands clawing at her hair, her uniform, her skin. The doors slid open, but instead of the brightly lit hospital floor, The interior was pitch black. Something cold and bony grabbed her shoulders from behind. A voice, ancient and rasping, whispered in her ear, "Now you're one of us." Darkness swallowed her whole. The next morning, the hospital staff found an empty bed in room 709. Lena Foster was gone. There was no record of her ever being admitted, and no security footage of her leaving. The hospital denied everything. But later that night, a new nurse on the night shift heard something strange. Soft whispers. And at the end of the hall, the out-of-order elevator lit up again. Ding. The 13th floor was waiting.